When you have hidradenitis suppurativa, it is very common to be prescribed antibiotics like all the time. So hidradenitis suppurativa, stage 1 through 3, it is an autoinflammatory skin condition characterized by boil-like abscesses that appear on the skin. It's a chronic condition. It is not contagious. It is not curable. It's not an infection, but antibiotics are often prescribed as treatment. And there's a lot of different reasons for this. Sometimes it's because secondary infections can occur. Other times it's because the use of like a long-term like doxycycline and like a lower dose is like calming down the immune system to essentially they're using antibiotics to lower inflammation. But this can be kind of a double-edged sword, or it can backfire. So let's talk about, like this commenter is saying, what's the problem with antibiotics? Like, why can't we just take on antibiotics? Why can't we just live on antibiotics and then eat whatever we want? Well, let's dive into it. We're going to be talking about gut health, because if you understand the connection between gut health and your immune system and your inflammatory responses, it all makes sense. So let's dive into it. Alteration to the gut microbiota. The most important and immediate profound effect of antibiotic use is the alteration of gut microbiota. Antibiotics, especially when used in a broad spectrum manner, can decrease the diversity of the bacteria in the gut and change the overall of the gut microbiome. And this can lead to the dominance of certain bacteria species at the expense of others. Essentially, what we end up having is something called dysbiosis, which is when there's an imbalance of the microbiome. We always have beneficial and opportunistic, essentially good and bad bacteria in the gut, but unfortunately, the bad guys are a lot more antibiotic resistant for the most part. So like overuse of antibiotics leaves us with diminished beneficial bacteria and an overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria, or things like candida, or like a yeast overgrowth. Which leads us to the next point, the growth of harmful bacteria. So by suppressing the growth of beneficial bacteria, antibiotics can provide the opportunity for pathogenic bacteria, like Clostridium difficile to thrive, leading to infections that can be difficult to treat. And there is reduced resistance to infections too. So a balanced gut microbiota plays a vital role in preventing the colonization by pathogens, and the disruption of this microbiota due to antibiotics can make the gut more susceptible to infections. So then dealing with things, you're going to do like H. pylori, and like I said, dysbiosis, you get like C. diff and other things. And this all has an impact on the immune system. So the gut bacteria play a role in shaping and training the immune system. A disturbed microbiota might affect the immune system's function and could lead to increased susceptibility to certain diseases, again, like autoimmune disease and inflammatory diseases. There can also be long-term metabolic effects. So changes in the gut bacteria due to antibiotics can affect the metabolism, leading to changes in weight and blood sugar regulation. And this could potentially increase the risk of developing metabolic disorders like obesity or diabetes or insulin resistance. And as we know, about like 50% of HS patients deal with insulin resistance as well. And that's going to be, which is again, and that can lead to high androgens and again, just a lot of other like comorbidities and like things that drive inflammation in the body and can drive more flares. And of course, if you need antibiotics, you need to take them, right? And so like, the gut microbiome is remarkably resilient, and it can recover from short-term antibiotic use, but prolonged and repeated use can make some species of bacteria that you need in your gut extinct or rare. And I think that science is still catching up with the consequences of this, but we're starting to conclude that chronic illness could be a consequence of this. And of course, chronic use of antibiotics can lead to the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria in the gut. So these bacteria can then spread to other parts of the body and to other individuals, posing as a significant public health concern. So, our body is always adapting. And again, we are more critters, bugs, bacteria, pathogens, and things than we are human, really. It's kind of interesting. And so if you're constantly trying to like kill this thing, it's going to evolve and become resistant to this bacteria. So at the end of the day, it's important to use antibiotics judiciously and when prescribed by your healthcare professional. But I think that it's important to have a conversation with your doctor if you've been on more than 3 or 4 rounds of, 3, 4, 5 month antibiotic courses, and you're not seeing the results that you want with your skin, and you're starting to have, digestive issues, other skin issues, maybe, chronic yeast infections or other candida symptoms. If you feel like you're all of a sudden getting like sick with other things more often, it's important to have these conversations and be like, hey, we might need to consider other treatment options, because there are other options. And to go back, to the original comment, right? If you have hidradenitis suppurativa and as we know, I mean, a lot of us know, right, that what we eat has an impact on our symptoms, not just because some of us have trigger foods, but because diet also has an extraordinary effect on our gut health, which affects everything that I just talked about. And diet has an extraordinary effect on our blood sugar regulation and our inflammation in general. And yes, there are certain medications that you can take which can manage your symptoms. And so you may feel like you can eat whatever you want if that's the way you choose. But I always tell people, medications, we can lose access to them. They can be taken from the market. They can stop working. And, that can be scary. And when you understand how diet impacts your body and you make the choices to manage your symptoms with diet, even if you are also using medication, that's a tool that no one can take from you. So learning how to manage symptoms or how to eat anti-inflammatory and for blood sugar regulation and for hormone health and for gut health, that's a tool that you can always have and use to mitigate symptoms and troubleshoot. Most of my nutrition clients that I work with, they're also on medication, whether it's, spironolactone or metformin or a biologic. And they come to me because this treatment option is often not enough to get to the results that they want, essentially full remission. And the combination of adding in dietary support is, honestly really beneficial for so many different reasons. So I would say, no, you can't live on antibiotics. You wouldn't want to live on antibiotics. If you are adamant that changing your diet is not within your wheelhouse, I would say that there are other treatment options which would probably work better for that choice of eating whatever you want and taking a medication instead. But antibiotics, I would say, are not one of them. Also, if you're curious, this document that I've been reading from is my Understanding HS guide. It is a 70-page ebook with everything, about understanding HS, when it's gut health, metabolism, hormones, environmental factors, contact triggers, what labs to ask for, how to talk to your doctor about it, diet and more. It supplements everything. So I really recommend it if you have HS.